Hi friends, I'm Sarah. Welcome back to my channel, Sunset Bow Tarot. So today I wanted to take a little bit of a break from the journaling and planning content that I have been putting out lately and spend a little bit of time talking about tarot because I'm pretty sure that's the reason why most people are subscribed to this channel is for the tarot talks. So let's talk tarot and take a look at some decks. I'm kind of making a VR to two different tags in one. Julie from Peekaboo Rose started a tag that is standout decks of 2022. So I really wanted to do a response to that, talk about some of the decks that, really were big for me and made an impression on me in 2022. And then Lisa Pepez also started a tag that is top 10 decks of 2022. So I figured I'll just put 10 decks on my list of standouts. So we're going to be taking a look at 10 decks that for me were standouts in 2022 and that, I would consider decks that I really enjoyed and made good use of in that year. These are not all decks that were released in 2022 necessarily, but they are decks that were really kind of important to my personal practice over the course of the year. And then some of them are obviously newer decks that were released over the course of 2022. So let's go ahead and get started. Also, before we get started, I do want to apologize for the fact that I have ink all over my hands. I was cleaning out some pens today in preparation for the video on fountain pens that I want to make this weekend. And, that happens. If you're a fountain pen person, this happens. So the first deck that I wanted to talk about, which was a standout deck for me in 2021, 2022, and probably for every year of my life for the foreseeable future, because this deck is my baby. This is Bangtan Tarot. This is the BTS Tarot deck that I created in collaboration with Julie and with Heather from Heather Carter. And this deck is, like I said, it's my baby because this is a deck that when you create your own deck, I've discovered, unsurprisingly, you end up having a very, very close relationship with it because every single card is exactly what you want it to be, and it has the meaning that you want it to have, and it says exactly what you want it to say about that meaning. And so this deck and I are just so bonded, so bonded. I love it. I've now, for the second year in a row, used this deck to do my year ahead spread. I use it all the time. I love this deck. I shamelessly read for other people with this deck because, I'm sorry, but if you know me and you love me, you know how I feel about BTS. And so you're just going to have to put up with being read for with a deck based on a Korean boy band, and you're going to get a really good reading because this deck and I are like this. So anyway, I absolutely adore this deck. It is the deck love of my life, and it makes me so happy every time I use it. Everything about it is just exactly what I want it to be, and I think about this deck nonstop. I've even thought about what it would be like to do another edition of this deck with original artwork rather than photography so that it could actually be published. This deck is so important to me. So anyway, yeah, I can't let a year go by without saying that this is one of my standouts because it just is. That's all there is to say about it. So my next standout deck of 2022 will be no surprise to anyone who watches Three Girls, One Deck, which is the monthly tarot live chat that Julie and Heather and I host, either on Julie's channel or my channel. I'll put a link in the cards to the playlist of episodes, but there is one episode where we had Candy, the lovely Candy of Candy Soul and Soil, who we just love, on the chat to talk about this deck. And something about it, she was talking about it, she was explaining how the deck kind of works, how the guidebook works, how she worked with the deck when she first got it, and it just grabbed me so hard in that moment that I literally went on Amazon and bought it during the live stream in front of everybody. And I haven't regretted that purchase for 1 second. I absolutely love this deck. I know that this is not a deck that is necessarily for everybody. It does have really beautiful backings, but this deck, as you can see, is a photo collage deck, and yes, every single card is an animal head on a human body. And I know it seems weird, but something about this one just really speaks to me. It really works. It has such a good personality, this deck. Like, it's honestly so funny. The way that the animals are created, like the expressions on their faces and everything, they're just full of life and full of personality. And you kind of forget that these are animal heads collaged onto human bodies, and you just start thinking of them as like actual creatures, weirdly enough. So it's just a really, really fantastic one. I get a smile on my face every time I read with it. I will say also that the guidebook, it just comes with a little guidebook that fits in the box, which is perfect. And the guidebook is really fantastic. It makes use of a lot of like humor and puns in terms of drawing the connections between the specific animals. They're just so funny. But in terms of drawing the connections between the specific animals and the card meaning. And so, I don't know. This is just a deck that something in me just really responds to, and I know it's really weird, but it's wonderful. It's one of those decks where I feel like if you have any kind of like curiosity about it, just give it a try and see how you feel about it when you get it into your hands. It's a Hay House deck. It's not super expensive. It's sort of like the Deviant Moon that way, where I feel like people have said, and this is true for me as well, that it's a different experience having it in your hands than just like watching a flip through of it or seeing it online. I don't know. There's just a connection there that just sort of happens. So I am a really big fan of this one, and I'm sorry, they're just hilarious. So this is a great deck. Again, this is the Tarot of Curious Creatures by Chris-Anne. So my next standout deck of 2022 is a deck that I don't think has come off of my reading desk since I first got it. I reach for it a lot. I really love it. This is the Dream Vision Tarot by Emma Zhang. And this is actually the second edition. I did own the first edition of the Dream Vision Tarot. And then she came out with the second edition, which, in my opinion, I just like it better. First of all, it comes with a guidebook, which the first edition just had a PDF guidebook. It has matte blue edges instead of holographic gilded edges. I loved the holographic edges. You know, they're beautiful, but these are much easier to shuffle and work with. This card size is a little bit smaller. Everything about it just makes it easier to work with. And then I really like how she changed up the artwork a little bit so that the card titles are sort of like hidden in the artwork. And I really, really love that. So this is just, I love this deck. And it's one of those decks that I wouldn't consider like normally to be super my aesthetic. There's something really kind of sort of almost alien and otherworldly feeling about the figures in this deck. Like you can see, you know, the colors are so bright, but it's all sort of cosmic feeling. Their eyes are just these little slits, you know, like they don't look like superhuman, human, not superhuman. They kind of do look superhuman, I guess. But it's just honestly so beautiful, and it feels not in any way strange or frightening or outside of the realm of what you feel comfortable with, at least not to me. You know, to me, this deck feels really gentle, really loving. It just has a beautiful, beautiful feel to it. The colors are so bright and beautiful. And the way that the cards are represented are, in all cases, in my opinion, very clever, very well thought through. Like, I just really think that, you know, I really like how she has thought about the card meanings and kind of stylized these images. They just really get at something quite special in the card meanings, I feel like. And so, yeah, it's just, this is such a beautiful deck. I really, truly, genuinely love this one, and I have been reaching for it a lot since I got it, and both the first edition and the second edition. I'm actually trying to decide whether or not I do want to rehome the first edition, because I do prefer the second edition, but I also just love this deck so much that I don't hate the idea of having both. I probably will end up rehoming it eventually, but yeah, this is just a really wonderful deck, and it's not one that I would have ever considered to be normally the kind of deck that I would be into, but I don't know, it just really speaks to me, and it just really feels it really feels tapped into something. You know, it has that tapped in feeling that is really important to me in decks. I don't know how better to describe it than that, but yeah, this is a really wonderful one. So again, this is the Dream Vision Tarot by Emma Zhang. So next up in my list of standout decks of 2022 is a deck that was definitely not released in 2022. This is a deck that's been around for a long time, and in fact, it's a deck that I've even owned before. So this is, of course, the beautiful, beautiful Shadowscapes Tarot. This is the Czech edition. I had owned the English edition of this deck ages ago, I don't know, years ago, and just had, I think, the very typical experience that people often have with the English edition of the deck, where the artwork is so detailed and it's just really small on that edition. And it's frustrating because these cards are so gorgeous and you really want to just get immersed into these cards, and yet that English edition is just small enough that it's impossible to really make out what's going on in the artwork, or at least it was, you know, for my eyes, which are very, very bad. So I ended up rehoming this the first time I ever got it. But then I saw the Czech edition, you know, it's one of those things where the Czech edition isn't actually like that much bigger, you know. I mean, it's not, basically the Czech edition, here, I'll actually just show it to you because mine is trimmed. So the Czech edition trimmed is about the same size as the regular edition, and the regular edition has borders. So imagine a card of this size with a border and then this artwork inside of the border. The borders aren't huge or anything. I mean, they're not like gigantic borders by any means, but the artwork is shrunk down just enough to like accommodate a border around the outside of this card. And honestly, it does make a really big difference. At least it did in terms of my ability to see what was going on in the cards. And so having a slightly, even just a slightly larger version of it, honestly made a really big difference for me. And I did, when I first got this deck, go through, you can see that I trimmed it because the Czech version is actually larger and it does come with borders and gold gilding, but I, you know, went through and trimmed all of the borders off and just with a purple Sharpie marked the card numbers and elemental symbols onto the cards. I wish I had better handwriting, but ultimately it came out fine, I think. And, you know, it makes it so that it's easy for me to identify what card it is. And then the rest of it is just like this beautiful artwork, completely released from borders and just so that you can kind of sink into it. It's really, really beautiful. And so since then I have been working with this deck and really enjoying it. I love this artwork. This is by Stephanie Puy-Moon-Law, who is obviously just an unbelievable fantasy artist. And this deck could not be more beautiful. And I'm so happy that I have a copy of it now that I can work with. It just thrills me that it's possible for me to actually, you know, work with this deck. I do wish that Llewellyn would come out with a version of this deck that's just like big, you know. I don't even care. I'd overhand shuffle it, whatever, but just a big edition where you could really, really see this artwork would be incredible. And, you know, I would love it if they ever did that. I doubt they ever will, but, you know, it really just does a disservice to this artwork to have it, you know, cramped in on such a small card. But the Czech edition does make enough of a difference that I can actually own the deck, and I do really enjoy it and enjoy working with it. So next up on my standout decks of 2022 is one that I don't think I've talked about very much, but I've really enjoyed working with it over the course of the year. This is the Black Violet Tarot Cherry Blossom Edition. This is by Heidi Phelps. And this is a really cool deck. This deck originally came out, I believe, in a black and white edition. And, you know, when it was black and white, like, I thought it was cool. But, you know, it didn't like super grab me. I was sort of on the fence about it. And then when it came out in this pink, white, and black edition, suddenly I was like, ooh, it's just so pretty. So I decided to pull the trigger and get this one, and I really, really like it. It's funny, there's a deck that has been on and off my wish list for a really, really long time, which is the Moon Void Tarot. And I've never quite been able to make up my mind about the Moon Void Tarot. And I feel like when I saw this one, this is sort of like the deck that I wanted the Moon Void Tarot to be, and it just wasn't quite. And this deck is so beautiful. It is a very feminine deck. Most of the figures in this deck are female presenting, and I really love the artwork. I love the sort of simplicity of it. I love the color palette. Everything about this just really kind of hits the sweet spot for me as far as a deck. You know, it's pretty simple. It's basically just a straight up Rider-Waite-Smith deck for the most part, but it has just a really beautiful aesthetic about it that makes it really, really fun to read with. And I've just thoroughly enjoyed working with this deck. It's just honestly a fun one to pick up and work with. This Justice card is so cool. So this is the Black Violet Tarot Cherry Blossom Edition by Heidi Phelps. It does come with a little guidebook, but honestly, this is one of those decks where it's so Rider-Waite-Smith that, you know, the guidebook I don't feel like is even really necessary, even though it's really nice that it's included. I always appreciate it when deck creators include a guidebook, but I don't know, I haven't spent very much time even looking at the guidebook because it just isn't really necessary for me to be able to read with this deck. And now for a deck that I wish did have more of a guidebook, because honestly, this deck goes its own very intriguing way on a lot of different cards. You know, even though I still love reading with it, it would be awesome if there had been some more information from the artist as far as, you know, what the thought process was going into some of these cards. But this is a very cool deck. This is a Tarot de Carlotydes. I believe that is how you pronounce it. I am not 100% positive, but that's what I think. So this deck, I love these backings. This is a Fournier deck, which if you've ever used a Fournier deck, they're kind of awesome if you have small hands. They are smaller than a normal tarot deck, like significantly smaller, and they have very, very nice flexible cardstock. So these are a great deck if you have small hands and you struggle to shuffle some of the big, you know, chonker decks that are coming out nowadays. But this is such a cool deck. This artwork is done by an artist who I believe is from Spain. Her name is Carlotta Santos, and it is honestly just, again, a really, really intriguing deck in terms of its artwork. All of the characters in this deck are wearing different kinds of costumes. You know, they are all, there's a real sort of variety of different depictions of people in this deck in terms of like the sort of era of the outfits that they're wearing. There are some interesting little nods to pop culture and fairy tales. Like there's definitely some Alice in Wonderland happening with the Six of Cups. There's the Princess and the Pea. Looks like Klimt, you know, like there are definitely a lot of nods in the artwork to just various different references. And it's honestly just a really, really cool and interesting deck. I have you know, people are wearing such interesting clothing, especially in the courts and the majors. And it's just really cool and really beautiful. And again, you know, a lot of the images are very unique feeling, and you know, there isn't a really strong, like, look at this. I mean, this looks exactly like Midsummer. So it's a really cool and interesting and unique deck. And again, it's just, I found it very, very intriguing and fun to work with. And so I've really been enjoying this one, but I would love it if this had more of a guidebook, because I'm sure that there are references that I'm missing. And, you know, some of the thought process, like the way that the King of Swords is wearing almost like a gag over his face. I don't know. There's just some really interesting stuff going on in this artwork that I would love to kind of know more of what the artist was thinking, but a lot of it has this really kind of fun, surrealist feel, and you can see how interesting the clothing is and everything like that. Like, look at this Queen of Swords. It's a really cool deck. So anyway, again, this is one I've really enjoyed working with. This is the Tarot de Carlotydes, and this is actually mass market as a Fournier deck, so you can, you know, get this one just from regular booksellers, I believe, but it's really fun. I've enjoyed this one a lot and enjoyed just looking at all of that interesting artwork and picking out the details and, you know, really thinking about what all of that might mean. So another deck that was a real standout for me in 2022, this is the Smoke, Ash, and Ember deck. This is by 3 Trees Tarot. The artist of this deck is Adam Ohlers, who is an artist that I absolutely love. I have followed his work for a long time. I literally have one of his prints hanging on my wall. I think he's absolutely fantastic. So this deck, I don't have the box out for it because it comes in a tuck box, so I have it in one of my bags from my shop, and I really need to restock these dragon bags because they are sold out, but they're really cool. But anyway, this is just a really, really wonderful dragon deck. It has a wonderful storybook style of artwork. This is, again, by the same creators, the same artist and creator as who created the Oak, Ash, and Thorn Tarot, but I almost think, I love the Oak, Ash, and Thorn, but I almost think I like this one even better. I love these little dragons. The different dragons in the suits are all sort of associated with the elements. So like these little cups dragons, they're little water dragons. They have like little webbed feet and, you know, little fishy details about them. And I just, look at this sweet Knight of Cups. You guys know how important the Knight of Cups is to me. And look how adorable this is, offering a little flower to the frog. But this is just a wonderful, really beautiful deck. The artwork is incredible. It has that storybook vibe to it, and it's just great. You know, I've had a great time reading with this deck, and you know, it's just one that I'm so happy came into my collection. I'm so happy they created this. It couldn't be lovelier. So finally, I kind of debated putting this one in, whether or not I wanted to put this one in, because I have struggled a little bit to work with this deck, literally just because of the form factor of it, the cardstock, and so on and so forth. But honestly, I enjoy it so much that I don't think, even given that, like, I think I'm just going to put up with it, how hard this deck can be to shuffle, because I just love it too much. So this is the 8-Bit Fantasy Tarot. This was a Kickstarter last year. You can see that the box like looks like a Game Boy. It's so cute. And then it's just a deck based on like 8-bit games. So for me, this harkens back to thoughts of playing like the Black Cauldron game when I was a kid. I really, really love the look of it. It's really fun. It's basically just a Rider-Waite-Smith clone, but in this just, you know, fun old-timey video game kind of aesthetic. And it's so cute. And I've actually been using this deck just this past week to do daily draws, and it's so fun. It makes me smile every time I get it out. Like, it just has a really nostalgic feel for me. And yeah, I just enjoy the heck out of it. So the one thing about this deck is that it is really small. As you can see, it is a very, very small square deck, but they used like cardstock that would normally be used for a normal size deck, which makes this deck very, very thick in proportion to its size. So actually riffle shuffling this deck all in one go is pretty close to impossible, because these cards are very hard to bend. So what I mostly do is I just overhand shuffle this deck. I can riffle shuffle it if I break it into 2 piles, so I know that I'm still getting it really good and well mixed up. And the cardstock is perfectly nice. Like, it's not like super brittle feeling or cardboardy or anything like that. It's good cardstock. It's just the kind of cardstock that should be used on a much larger deck if you want to be able to actually bend the cards at all. So it is a little hard to work with, but I honestly don't mind it, and, you know, have gotten to the point that I am willing to accept that difficulty just because I find the aesthetic of this so cute. I love a mini deck, and I just love this pixelated artwork. It is so adorable. So that is the 8-Bit Fantasy Tarot. So if you guys know me, you know I'm not a big Oracle reader, but I do actually have a couple of Oracle decks on my standout decks of 2022 list, just because they are ones that I've had really profound experiences with, honestly. So the first one I want to start with is the Reclaim Oracle. And this deck is so good. This Oracle, well, it will not let me live, I guess, is how I will put it. This is so incisive, this Oracle. Every card basically just has a feeling that is expressed by the card. So, you have hope, humility, fear, patience, fairness, scarcity, confusion. But if you look loneliness, like if you look at the way that the meanings of the cards are expressed in the artwork, it's so freaking poignant. Like, look at this loneliness card. I mean, something about this deck and the artwork just gets me right in the feels. And this is another deck where I don't necessarily feel like this is 100% my art style. And the way that the figures are depicted in this deck is really sort of offbeat. They don't, again, look entirely human. But something about that just really speaks to me. They all sort of have like larger bodies. It's not always clear like what gender they are. But something about it just really speaks in a very, very clear and pointed voice. And every time I do a pull from this deck, the card that I get just like grabs me by the heart. I don't even know how else to express it. This is a really, really powerful deck. So one cool thing is that the creator of this deck actually did come out with like an expansion pack just in the last couple months. She came out with an expansion pack of a couple of additional cards, a new guidebook that actually contains those additional cards in it. And I of course got those things because the more cards in this deck, the better. This is a deck that has a huge number, like I think it almost has 100 cards in it. I'm not sure exactly how many, but it's like in the 90s. So it is a really big deck, but it is just a really, really powerful one. And if you're ready to do some deep emotional work, if you're ready to be like called out and have your feelings like really pinpointed and really brought to your attention and really examined, I feel like this deck will do that for you. So this is a really special one. This is just one of those ones where again, it feels channeled. It feels like it's really expressing something, and it feels like it really connects to me in a deep way. So again, this is the Reclaim Oracle. This is a really, really great Oracle deck. And I've it's hard to say I've loved working with this, but I've had just incredible effects from working with this, I guess is how I should put it. So this is a really good deck. So the final deck that I want to put on my standouts list for 2022 is another Oracle deck. This is the She of Insight Oracle by Renee of Meadowlark Mystic. She's someone who is with us here on TarotTube, so she's absolutely wonderful, and you should go check out her channel. So she created this collage artwork, and again, this is the kind of artwork that definitely feels channeled. Like there is some specific energy or archetype that is being brought forth by each of these images. Each of them has a name. Each of them has like a purpose. And this is a deck that I really enjoyed for a chunk of 2022, like drawing a monthly card and leaving it out on my desk to look at and think about. I really, really highly recommend this. I believe Renee still has this available for sale. I will put a link down in the description box to let you know, like, look how beautiful this artwork is. But I'll put a link in the description box to where you can get the deck. And the guidebook is really good. Renee wrote it, and it just, every single card has specific questions to consider, and it's just a great deck to pull a card and leave it out and think about the questions in the guidebook. And, they all get at something really, really profound in my personal opinion. So I actually want to go back to, pulling the monthly card from this deck this year, because I just really enjoyed that practice, and it's such beautiful, beautiful artwork. So anyway, again, this is the She of Insight Oracle by Renee of Meadowlark Mystic, and this is a really wonderful, beautiful oracle. So I really, really highly recommend this one. Okay, so I have done 10 decks, but I do have an honorable mention. This really isn't a deck, really, but it is a tarot related something. Well, I guess you could call it a deck. This is the Charmcast Tarot. And so this is a set of tarot cards. This actually was a Kickstarter, and I got these at sort of the tail end of 2021, but I have enjoyed working with these and playing with them so much over the course of 2022. I just have these out all the time, and they are just like the most wonderful feeling things to play with. They're fun to draw cards, or to, you know, grab a handful and just sort of look at what came up for you. They're incredibly tactilely pleasurable to play with. And, you know, it's just, these are they're little tarot charms. I'll try to hold one close to the camera. Focus, please. They're just little tarot charms. They're, you know, little stick figures based on the Rider-Waite-Smith, but they're so well made. They are heavy feeling, you know, they're this nice metal. And also, one of the things that you could get with them was a pendant that is magnetic, and so you can actually stick a card into this magnetic pendant and wear it as jewelry. And honestly, this is my most worn piece of jewelry this year. I have enjoyed this so much. Like, it's been really fun actually to just pick out a card and set an intention for an event and then wear this to that event. Like, you know, for example, I put in the Magician when I sang in my voice recital, because, you know, it's about manifestation and believing in your own abilities. I have the Sun card in there right now because the last time I wore this was to a party, and I just, you know, I wanted to have a good time and have it be joyful and fun and everybody having a great time. So this has just been another really lovely aspect of having these, is that ability to just sort of like make a tarot intention part of your outfit for the day. So honestly, I've used this a ton. I've worn this a lot, and this has just been a great thing. So I really, really love the Charmcast tarot. I do believe that there are some plastic ones that she has also created. So, you know, for folks for whom the metal ones are too expensive or too heavy, you know, there is, I believe, a plastic set that now exists. I don't know the availability status of those, but I really love the metal ones, and these are just, they feel like a treasure. They feel really special when you use them. And I've loved having these for the course of 2022. So that again is the Charmcast tarot. So that's it for my standout decks of 2022 and or top 10 decks of 2022. So I hope you enjoyed hanging out with me while we took a look at these decks and talked a little bit about how they all served me and how I enjoyed working with them over the course of the past year. If you are interested in booking a tarot reading with me, you can find all of that information down in the description box down below. My tarot reading shop is online at sunsetbow.com. You can also find, if you are so interested in some of the bags and other things that I make, again, I do need to restock these ones because they are out of stock, but I have a lot of other really cool bags available in my Etsy shop, which is Sunset Bow Boutique. I will have a link to that down below as well. And thank you again for hanging out with me while we walked through some fun tarot decks from 2022. Have a great one, everybody. Bye-bye.